Let's get started with our first news. Daniel Cormier recently gave his breakdown on Nassourdine Imavov's chances against Khamzat following Imavov's win over Borralho at UFC Paris. While many fans viewed Imavov's performance as tactical, some also felt it was a bit underwhelming. Still, the victory has put him in the conversation, but DC believes the road to a title shot isn't quite guaranteed yet. He pointed out that all eyes are now shifting to UFC Vancouver, where Rieder will meet Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez in what promises to be a brutal high-pressure clash inside the octagon. That fight, according to Cormier, could end up deciding who really deserves the next opportunity at the middleweight belt. On ESPN's Good Guy Bad Guy, Cormier explained that Imavov looked sharp, composed, and impressive. There's no doubt about his skills, but DC admitted that he doesn't feel the Paris performance alone was enough to cement a title shot. Instead, the upcoming battle between Hernandez and Yair could determine who truly steps into the spotlight. Both fighters bring relentless pressure, both thrive in chaos, and the winner will likely capture the attention of fans and the UFC matchmakers. In Cormier's eyes, this fight carries huge implications, not just for the contenders, but also for Khamzat, who currently holds the championship. Cormier went on to say that Imavov is definitely someone who can challenge Khamzat in certain areas that Du Plessis didn't expose. Still, he wasn't convinced that Imavov showed enough to leapfrog other contenders. He admitted his mindset mirrors that of many fans. It's often about what's fresh in memory. The last big performance tends to stick, and whichever fighter makes a statement in Vancouver could end up with the strongest claim for a title shot. Reflecting on Imavov's showing, Cormier acknowledged that he looked great, that his striking was clean, and his composure under pressure was impressive. But in a division as stacked as middleweight, timing and momentum matter just as much as skill. He noted that if Hernandez looks as dominant as he did in his last outing, or if Rieder manages to finish him in spectacular fashion, either man could instantly become the front runner. That's the kind of sport the UFC is. It's about impact, about leaving the kind of performance that fans and the organization simply cannot ignore. Cormier summed it up by emphasizing that every single fight at middleweight now feels massive, with Khamzat at the top, and contenders like Imavov, Hernandez, and Rieder all circling. The division has never been more unpredictable or exciting. Each bout carries real consequences for the title picture, and every fighter knows they have to deliver something memorable if they want to earn their shot. Imavov has the talent, he has the skills, but the question is whether his last performance left a lasting impression strong enough to push him ahead. As Cormier said, the middleweight division is on fire, and the future of the championship will be shaped by who makes the boldest statement in the fights to come. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Move on to another news. Joe Rogan recently gave his thoughts on Du Plessis and his future in the middleweight division, and his take was brutal. According to Rogan, Du Plessis will never defeat Khamzat as long as Khamzat is sitting on the throne at 85. Despite Du Plessis vowing to make his way back to the top and reclaim the belt, Rogan doesn't believe that is even remotely possible given the massive gap in skills, particularly when it comes to wrestling. At UFC 319, Du Plessis stepped into the octagon with Khamzat, and the fight was one-sided. The South African simply had no answer for Khamzat's world-class wrestling, relentless pace, and suffocating top game. Heading into the fight, Du Plessis' coach insisted that their strategy was to counter Khamzat's wrestling with takedowns of their own. But once the cage door shut, the reality was very different. Khamzat completely dominated, landing 12 takedowns compared to just one from the now former champion. It was a clear display of just how wide the gap is between the two when it comes to grappling. Since that loss, Du Plessis has been vocal about his intentions to return stronger and reclaim the belt. However, Rogan and Brendan Schaub made it clear during a recent UFC Paris Fight Companion episode that they do not believe Du Plessis can close that gap. Rogan explained that when you get to the highest level in the UFC, there are simply not enough hours in the day to make up the difference in skill. He stressed that Du Plessis is not a young fighter who can suddenly reinvent his game. He is not 21 years old, and at this stage it's impossible to expect him to develop wrestling that could ever rival Khamzat's. Rogan added that even if Du Plessis trains hard, even if he improves, it will not be enough. He can definitely get better, but Khamzat is extraordinary. That's the key word Rogan used to describe him. Extraordinary. Schaub echoed that sentiment, agreeing that Du Plessis has no realistic path to ever beating Khamzat in wrestling exchanges. For them, the fight at UFC 319 said it all. Meanwhile, the middleweight division continues to heat up. At UFC Paris, Nassourdine Imavov earned a big win over Barallo, securing a unanimous decision. The victory boosted his standing in the rankings and put him in the conversation for the next title shot. However, as Ariel Helwani pointed out recently, Imavov is not guaranteed the next opportunity. The focus is now shifting to UFC Vancouver, where Rieder will face Anthony Hernandez on October 18th. That clash promises fireworks, with both fighters known for their relentless pressure and chaos inside the cage. Helwani and other analysts believe that if either Hernandez or Rieder delivers a massive performance that captures the attention of the fans and the UFC, they could leapfrog Imavov and earn the title shot instead. The division is stacked, the contenders are hungry, and with Khamzat sitting at the top, every single fight has huge implications for the future of the belt. Rogan made it clear Du Plessis may still be in the mix, but as long as Khamzat reigns, the idea of him regaining the championship feels impossible. Move on to another news. On October 24, 220, the MMA world was left in absolute shock after putting on what many believe was the greatest performance of his career against Justin Gaethje at UFC 254. Khabib Nurmagomedov made the stunning decision to retire. It was his first fight without his father Abdulmanap, who had tragically passed away earlier that year. With grief still heavy on his heart, Khabib laid down his gloves and declared, "Today I want to say this was my last fight. Ain't no way I'm coming here without my father." At 29-0, undefeated and untouchable, the Dagestani champion walked away, but fans were left wondering how far he could have gone if he hadn't retired. Dana White admitted the same. In a 2022 GQ interview, the UFC CEO said Khabib retired too early, leaving questions about just how much more he could have achieved. The truth is, many believe Khabib had plenty left in the tank, and if he had continued, the road to 30-0 was already being set. After dismantling Gaethje, the obvious blockbuster fight was a rematch with Conor. Their first meeting at UFC 229 shattered records, bringing in a massive 2.4 million pay-per-view buys. Dana was desperate to make it happen again, especially with Khabib chasing that historic milestone of 30-0. Even after Khabib announced retirement, the UFC kept him as champion for months. The plan was clear. The winner of Conor vs. Dustin Poirier at UFC 257 would likely be the man to challenge Khabib. Dana himself told Sky Sports that if Conor won in spectacular fashion, it would be impossible to deny him the shot. But Poirier crushed those dreams. He became the first man to knock out Conor, shaking the world at Etihad Arena. That win should have lined up Poirier to fight Khabib for the belt, but instead, the Diamond chose a trilogy with Conor. Meanwhile, the lightweight division was shifting fast. At UFC 269, Charles Oliveira delivered a sensational knockout over Michael Chandler to claim the vacant title. If Conor had won that fight, there's no doubt the UFC would have lined him up for a rematch with Khabib. 2 wins in a row, calling out his greatest rival in Abu Dhabi, would have been the perfect setup. Dana would have put a record-breaking deal on the table. That's how badly the UFC wanted Khabib vs. Conor too. But with Conor sidelined, the next clear challenger would have been Oliveira, a surging contender, dangerous everywhere, especially on the ground. Fans were buzzing at the thought of a legend versus rising star showdown, and yet many believe Khabib's relentless pressure and grappling would have been too much, just as it was for everyone else. Had Khabib reached 30-0, the next chapter could have been even bigger, moving up to welterweight to chase double champ status. At the time, Kamaru Usman was running through the division, defending his belt against Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, and Gilbert Burns. A clash between Usman and Khabib would have been massive. Usman had the size, the reach, and the natural welterweight frame, but Khabib had the relentless grappling, the smothering pace, and the kind of wrestling that even elite opponents couldn't stop. While Usman would have presented a tougher challenge than Gaethje or Poirier, many still believe Khabib could have found success, pushing him to the cage, breaking his base, and maybe even locking in a rear naked choke. Imagine Khabib submitting Usman, becoming a double champ, and staying undefeated. That would have cemented his place as the greatest of all time. Inst walked away at 29-0, leaving behind a legacy of perfection, but also endless what-ifs that will live on forever. Move on to another news. Nasruddin Imavov surprised fans with a major reveal, sharing a video on social media that showed he weighed just 104 pounds, or 87.9 kilograms on fight night against Borrelho. The number immediately raised eyebrows because it's noticeably lower than what most UFC middleweights usually weigh after rehydration. Typically, fighters in this division balloon back up past 200 pounds, often between 225, with some even heavier. Paulo Costa, for example, has entered the cage as heavy as 215 pounds, making him more than 20 pounds bigger than Imavov on fight night. At the elite level, that's a huge difference. This detail sheds light on the ongoing conversation about weight cutting and size advantages in MMA. For years, middleweights have cut from massive walk-around weights to make ET5 pain, only to rehydrate and regain much of it within 24 hours. By comparison, Imavov's fight night weight suggests a smaller cut, meaning he may not be depleting himself as much. That could benefit his cardio endurance and sharpness, though the trade-off is being the smaller man inside the octagon. Looking at his fight against Borrelho, Imavov's lighter frame didn't appear to hold him back. He was quick, agile, and composed, with some even arguing that carrying less weight made him more efficient. Still, in a division full of heavy hitters, coming in under 200 pounds is unusual. This raises speculation about whether Imavov could eventually move down to welterweight, where his frame might be more evenly matched. The comparison to Costa is especially striking. Costa rehydrates into a light heavyweight-sized frame, while Imavov fights much closer to his natural weight. That 20-pound gap can make a big difference in strength and durability, but Imavov seems to embrace the trade-off, relying on speed, cardio, and skill rather than brute size. By openly sharing his fight night weight, he's showing confidence in his approach and proving that size isn't everything. At 19.4 pounds, Imavov is carving his own path in the UFC middleweight division, bringing a fresh dynamic to how fighters balance weight, performance, and endurance. Whether it becomes an advantage or a limitation, it's a fascinating wrinkle in his rise through the ranks. Move on to another news. Ilia has once again put himself in the spotlight with a bold claim that he is ready to step into the boxing ring with one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet, Terence Crawford. As Crawford prepares for what many are calling the biggest fight of his career, Ilia decided to throw his own name into the conversation. On Saturday, September 13, Crawford will face Canelo Alvarez in a historic showdown at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. This fight is being co-promoted by Turki Al-Sheikh, alongside UFC CEO Dana White. Earlier this year, White officially confirmed that he was bringing his promotional power from the octagon to the boxing ring after considering the move for over a decade. That announcement opened the door for multiple UFC fighters to express their interest in testing themselves with the 8-ounce gloves, and Ilia is now one of the most vocal names in that conversation. Fresh off capturing the lightweight world title, Ilia has wasted no time in making his presence felt. Just days before Crawford's mega fight in Sin City, Ilia posted a photo with the boxing superstar on social media and simply asked fans who they thought would win if the two ever shared the ring. The post quickly gained traction, sparking debates across both MMA and boxing communities. But Ilia wasn't done there. Within 24 hours, he followed it up with a statement of his own that made headlines. He wrote, "I won't talk about what would happen between me and Crawford in an octagon. I'll talk about what would happen in a ring. I put him to sleep in the first contact." The confidence behind that statement was enough to stir up even more attention, with fans and analysts weighing in on whether Ilia's power could truly translate into the boxing world. While Crawford is focused on the massive challenge ahead of him in Canelo, Ilia's own future inside the octagon remains a hot topic. He has not yet booked his first title defense after delivering a sensational first-round knockout over Charles Oliveira in June, a performance that shocked the MMA world and cemented his status as one of the most dangerous fighters in the sport. The most likely scenario for Ilia's next fight is a showdown with the number 2 ranked contender Arman. Many fans have been clamoring for that matchup, as it promises high-level striking, relentless pace, and the potential for fireworks from the opening bell. Still, the possibility of other major fights cannot be ignored. A rematch with Max Holloway at lightweight is still very much on the table, considering the history and unfinished business between the two. And then there's Justin Gaethje, who has made it clear with his recent ultimatum that he wants big fights only, putting his name right in the mix for Ilia's first defense. For now, Crawford has his eyes locked on Canelo, while Ilia continues to build his reputation as one of the boldest champions in the UFC. With statements like these, he's proving he's not afraid to call out the very best in combat sports, and his confidence suggests he truly believes he can deliver. Whether or not he ever shares a boxing ring with Crawford, Ilia has already captured the attention of fans worldwide with his fearless attitude and his ability to back up his words with spectacular performances. Move on to another news. Dana White is under fire after major backlash from the MMA community. The controversy erupted when the UFC released a new episode of Embedded, but instead of featuring No See UFC, the official channel pushed embedded episodes for Canelo vs. Crawford, the massive boxing showdown in Las Vegas. Fans immediately accused Dana of once again using the UFC platform to promote outside ventures. Critics compared it to Power Slap, claiming he's leveraging UFC's audience for projects unrelated to MMA. Many fans argued that fighters like Diego Lopez and James Silva, who are headlining No See UFC, were left completely overlooked. They felt the two deserved proper promotion, especially since the UFC has historically given embedded coverage to fight night headliners. While the promotion did release highlights of Lopez vs. Ortega and a feature on Lopez giving back to his community, fans were quick to note it was nowhere near the same level of exposure. In their eyes, No See UFC was sidelined, and that's why frustration boiled over. Social media lit up with furious comments. One fan wrote, "UFC letting Netflix drop boxing embedded while Diego vs. Silva gets no promo. Dana chasing that Saudi money hard." Another blasted, "Real fighters in our backyard getting ignored. Fire Baldy." Others labeled the move absolutely embarrassing, saying Dana needs to go and disgraceful company putting more effort into promoting boxing than MMA. The anger didn't stop there. Fans pointed out the irony of neglecting UFC's own headliners while pushing boxing. One said, "Can Dana and the UFC promote the actual main events a little bit more? We got Pada vs. Aina next month, for crying out loud." The guy literally carried the UFC, and others questioned why boxing content was even on UFC's channel, suggesting a separate TKO platform instead of merging everything in a way that feels forced. UFC embedded is for UFC, one fan raged. "Want to make Zuffa embedded? Fine, but this feels like Amazon remaking Finding Nemo." Overall, the sentiment is clear. Fans don't want UFC's flagship content diluted with outside ventures. Some even accused the promotion of intentionally making the No See UFC card weaker to push attention toward boxing. Others felt Dana and his team should clearly separate UFC from his other projects under the TKO banner. While some see value in branching out to bring in new fans, most agree that UFC fighters, especially headliners, deserve the spotlight. In the end, prioritizing boxing embedded over UFC embedded left a sour taste, with fans demanding the promotion put its own fighters and events first.